Let's get more on one of our top stories now. The situation in Gaza. The United Nations humanitarian chief has said the return to hostilities must stop. ActionAid country director Jamil Sawalmeh joins us now from Ramallah in the West Bank. Welcome back to the program, Jamil.
Thank you, Bridget. Good morning.
Good morning to you. What are you hearing and seeing now that hostilities have resumed?
Well, unfortunately, what we are seeing is that the civilian population of Gaza have to relive this nightmare again. Unfortunately, late last night, Israel started a wide-scale bombardment and airstrikes across Gaza Strip, resulting in the death of more than 420 Gazans and wounding more than 500. So unfortunately, this also returns us to square one of the human suffering that the population in Gaza have lived for the past 16 months. And now this reality shows that we are actually in dire need now for all intervention and diplomatic pressure to call for all parties to commit to the ceasefire agreement that was signed earlier in January this year, and to continue facilitating the flow of humanitarian aid to the 2.1 million Gazans who have been severely impacted by the recent total blockade of humanitarian aid in Gaza. So the reality is very grim. And unfortunately, the population now have found themselves in living the nightmares again, where displacement is imminent now, with the evacuation orders being issued by the Israeli army for wide areas of the Gaza Strip. In these evacuation areas, we have seen that 3 medical primary care centers, as well as 1 field hospital, have to evacuate as part of these military evacuation orders.
Jamil, what about your colleagues in Gaza? Have you had any contact with them? Are they safe? What sort of work are they able to carry out, or are they just trying to find shelter right now while that bombardment continues?
Yes, so fortunately we can confirm that our colleagues are safe, but unfortunately the safety and security situation does not allow any movement currently in Gaza, especially that the airstrikes have continued. Just before I joined you, there were airstrikes in the eastern part of Khan Yunis. So this means that the operational reality that we are facing as international aid agencies operating in Gaza are going to get complicated if this resumption of war continues for a longer period of time. And of course, that's going to hinder our efforts to deliver very much needed humanitarian aid, including food, water, medical services to 2.1 million Gazans who have left with nothing at the moment.
So the aid situation is worsening. Had you been able to get some supplies in when the ceasefire was brokered? Were you able to get enough supplies into Gaza to at least give people some medical and food supplies for the coming weeks, or is it still just an incredibly dire situation there?
It is incredibly a dire situation. So after the implementation of the ceasefire agreement, which was a sigh of relief for all of us, we have started seeing improvement in the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza, with around 600 trucks coming into Gaza on a daily basis. But unfortunately, the variety and the type of aid was not really meeting the real needs of the people. So we have seen that there was an increase in the amount of food and water coming into Gaza, but the very much needed medical supplies were still obstructed by Israel. The fuel supplies that were agreed as part of the humanitarian protocol in the ceasefire agreement were not also permitted to come into Gaza. Heavy equipment was also obstructed, systematically obstructed. These equipment are very much needed to remove the rubble and to recover the bodies of the people who are still buried under the rubble. So during the pause, that period of pause, we've managed to get some aid in, but it was almost needed on a daily basis. So it was consumed right away. Since, as I've said previously, 2.1 million are in need for that humanitarian aid. Unfortunately, 17 days ago, Israel completely shut down the crossings to Gaza and shutting down all humanitarian aid. So for the past 17 days, including the period of the holy month of Ramadan, nothing have got into Gaza. And we as ActionAid and other international agencies were not able to transport humanitarian aid into Gaza, which leaves now a critical amount of supply of food and water that is still available in Gaza, which will last for only a few days, unfortunately.